What Squid Game players' deaths were the most cruel and unfair, and how did they influence the events inside the game? In this video, all the truth behind every eliminated player. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to watch new videos. There are a lot of things you don't know about. The most heartbreaking death was probably player 199 or Ollie, who like other players entered the game to help his family. His sad backstory and compassionate heart soon made him a favorite character, with many even rooting for him to win. However, that wish was cut short by his tragic death. Up until then, he had managed to beat all the games and even make friends along the way. Sadly, it was one of those friends' betrayals cost him his life. During the game of marbles, he paired up with player 218 or Sang-woo, which turned out to be the worst decision. At first, Ollie had a streak of luck against Sang-woo despite being unfamiliar with Korean childhood games. But Sang-woo outsmarted him and tricked Ollie into giving him all of his marbles. When he realized that he was tricked, there was already a masked man standing behind him, and sadly he was killed. Comment if you voted for Ollie to win the Squid Game. This was player 218's most painful betrayal, but it wasn't the only one. In the next game after marbles, he betrayed another player who had helped him. During the game of stepping stones, where they had to cross the glass bridge, Sang-woo shoved player 017 off the tile and to his demise just to stand on the tile. It was then that Gi-hun pointed out that player 017 was the reason they even made it that far in the glass bridge. Sang-woo remained unapologetic and defended his choice. The death of another innocent player at his hands sent the audience into a spiral. Sadly, it didn't end there for him, because shortly after, he added another person to his streak. Players who lost their partners during marbles were all quite heartbroken except him. Player 069 in particular couldn't get over the heartbreak of losing his wife during the game. During the vote, he desperately begged the other players to vote to end the game. But Sang-woo confronted him harshly and told him not to waste his wife's and hundreds of other players' lives by not carrying on. Unfortunately, Sang-woo's words and the trauma of heartbreak from losing his wife caused him to end his life that same night. This sad death brought a huge and sad conclusion to the minor character's story. But the worst of all his conquests was player 067 or Sae-byeok. After her sad backstory about how she needed the prize money to reunite with her family still trapped in North Korea, viewers rooted for her with hopes of her becoming the winner. She also only successfully made it so far because of the huge sacrifice player 240 made for her. Because she and Sae-byeok were women and were considered to be weak, no one chose to pair with them. The two paired up with themselves and spent the waiting time before the games telling each other their sad backstories. Player 240 discovered Sae-byeok had a family waiting for her on the outside and made a promise that she would make sure Sae-byeok wins the games so she can proceed. The impact of this statement is only revealed at the last moment of the marbles games. She stayed true to her promise and intentionally dropped her marble on her turn to allow Sae-byeok win. Her selfless death made the audience cry and made it possible for Sae-byeok to play and finish the glass bridge game. However, she was severely injured because of the glass bridge explosion that left a shard in her belly. But as a finalist, she went on to have a fancy dinner with her worsening condition. Gi-hun compassionately tried to help her by crying out to the guards who ignored him. Sang-woo, on the other hand, plotted to kill her, and he succeeded by slashing her throat. Although Gi-hun helped Sae-byeok fulfill her reason for the games, which was her brother, her death still hurt to watch. The most tragic moment of it all was her telling Gi-hun she wanted to go home in her dying moment. After her death, Sang-woo changed, but in a way that caused us to cry ugly tears. Throughout the series, he was a character with questionable morals who would stop at nothing to win. However, during the final game between him and Gi-hun, he realized how much of a monster he had become. That caused him to take his own life while begging Gi-hun to take care of his mother, which Gi-hun does after getting the prize money. But his death, being his redemption for killing numerous players, was one of the saddest scenes of Season 1. Share in the comments which of his victims' death was the most painful to watch. But Sang-woo wasn't the only bad guy. The protagonist Gi-hun also had his moments that caused another player's death. At the beginning of the games, player 001 or Il-nam and him become super close. Gi-hun also starts protecting Il-nam after he reveals that he has a brain tumor and doesn't have much time left. However, in the marble game, things drastically changed. Gi-hun began trying to cheat Il-nam into giving him all his marbles by exploiting his mental condition. Luckily for him, he doesn't have to trick him anymore, as the old man willingly gives Gi-hun his last marble so he can win the game. Despite later knowing he was the bad guy all along, it was a very sad moment for viewers watching Gi-hun walk away knowing his friend was about to die. The old man's death became one of the saddest in Squid Game. Was the old man's death still sad for you when you learned who he truly was? A big reason why Gi-hun entered the Squid Games in the first place was because his mother needed surgery. His mother Omalsoon had diabetes and a foot infection that needed to be treated. Sadly, she couldn't because Gi-hun had already squandered most of their money in addition to canceling their health insurance. So in a desperate attempt to save her, he left his ailing mother all alone and joined the game. To his credit, he won the game and got the prize money for her surgery, but it was already too late. His abandonment caused her condition to deteriorate to death as he found his mother dead by the time he arrived home from the games. Even though she was not a player, we were moved to tears by the scene where he refused to accept his mother's death and begged her to wake up. He ultimately gave up and broke down crying because he was filled with regret, guilt, and pain over seeing his mother, enemies, and friends die in cold blood. Aside from the deaths of the main characters, a few side characters' deaths also brought us to tears. The first players to be eliminated from the games, player 324 and player 250 were one of them. Not knowing what they were getting into, they engaged in friendly banter during the green light red light games and even made a bet on who would cross the finish line first. Sadly, player 324 became the first player to be eliminated from the game, and player 250, who moved from shock, died after. These two players' tragic death sadly signified the start of the game in Season 1. Another side player's death that made the audience rain tears was player 369. During the Dalgona game, players were required to carve out a shade from a Dalgona within a time limit, and player 369 received the tricky umbrella shape. Sadly, his attempt failed and he was executed. His death was particularly sad because he had previously pleaded with the guards to show mercy after the deadly first game. He also tried to convince the other players to vote for the game to stop. Because of this, viewers noticed him, and though he wasn't a main character, his death caused deep sadness. But did you notice this player during the show? After that game, the remaining contestants were given their rations of food and drink, however not everyone got it. Player 101, player 212, and the rest of their gang queued up a second time, depriving 5 people of food and water. The guards did nothing to rectify this, so player 271 stepped up to confront player 101. Sadly, his act of bravery led to his death, caused by Doksu kicking him heavily a few times. Despite Gi-hun's emotional cries for help, the guards still do nothing except carry his body away. This was such a sad death to watch that highlighted the injustice of the game. For the players, it highlighted that they could kill anyone outside of the games. This caused things to escalate and players begin to form teams and alliances. Those who don't team up are eliminated, and among them is contestant 198. Doksu made her pay in death for alerting everyone of him and his crew stealing other people's rations. The tragedy of this death lay in the unfairness of it all, and it caused viewers to be sad. Share in the comments if you were sad while watching this scene. Another death that brought us to our knees in Season 1 was the tragic end of the guard and the player pair from Episode 3. At the end of the second game, player 119 tried to fight back against the guards for survival after breaking his Dalgona. He stabbed one guard, shot another in the arm, then took him as a hostage. In an intense standoff, he ordered the hostage guard to take off his mask and reveal his face. He did, and player 119 realized he was a young boy, and his compassion stopped him from executing the guard. Sadly, he realized that he was cornered and took his own life. The guard was also not spared, as the front man executed him for revealing his face after player 119 spared him. This sad situation moves the audience to tears, but it created a significant moment where the frontman warned the guards that once the players knew their identity, they would die. The same frontman was responsible for one of the most depressing moments of Season 1 when he shot the most unexpected person. Jun-ho, the cop determined to find his brother and expose the games, was tragically shot on a cliff. This shot was made by the front man, who we later discovered was Jun-ho's missing brother In-ho. In-ho shot him to prevent him from exposing the games and revealing his identity. He shot Jun-ho in the shoulder, which sent him tumbling off the cliff and tears tumbling down our eyes. Even though first season was full of sadness and emotions, Season 3 promises to be the most cruel and heartbreaking. Be sure to watch the videos on the channel that highlight more about events that wait for us in Season 3. Like the video and subscribe on the channel for more Squid Game content in the future, and stay in touch as Episode 1 of Season 3 will be released already on June 27th.